We want to welcome you guys to L3 Perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Glenn Davis. I'm sitting here with my guy, Cameron Macias.
It's your boy, Killer Cam.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the L3 Perspective. I am sitting here with my guy, Coach Cam. As you know, my name is Glenn Davis. This is the L3 Perspective. We talk life, we talk love, we talk leadership. I'm excited about today's guest.
Yeah, man.
Right? I think
blast
that
from the past.
Yes. So really looking forward to today's conversation. To all of our viewers, thank you guys for tuning in. Cam, I'm gonna toss it over to you, and then we can dive into it.
Hey, as you guys already know, like, love, share, comment, send us messages. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. At the end of the day, we do this for you. So your feedback is integral for our show to be as beneficial to you as it absolutely can be. So today, our guest is Lee Ciokiewicz, my man. So we came into the Air Force at the exact same time. And we were in tech school together. And Lee's the reason why I got to come back to sunny California after our tech school was done. My knight in shining armor, as I always tell him in my stories. We'll talk about how that was a good and a bad decision on my part. But before we all get into all that, Lee, what's up, man? Please introduce yourself to folks, and then let's get rapping.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on, guys. This has been something that I've been talking with Cam for a while, and I've just really wanted the opportunity to get on and talk with you guys, and like you know, I do a podcast as well, so it's all about hearing the stories of people and having really good conversations. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm joined a long time ago with my boy Cam here, and I guess you could say I was his knight in shining armor, but really it was a mutual decision for sure.
Nice.
And we can get into that because that's a pretty good story.
For sure.
I'm looking forward to it.
So speaking of the podcast, I even wore the shirt in solidarity of the old podcast.
Yeah.
But Lee hit me up because he's like, because you either wanted to get into it or back into it, like when we talked like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh yeah. And then all of a sudden the AIRPOWER, and it was funny when I saw the AIRPOWER Hour coming out, I like went back to our messages and I was like, oh, my man did it. And he got it funded. He's like my hero.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I started doing podcasting a while ago.
Yeah.
And, I just did I was actually home on baby leave.
Okay.
After my second kid. And I was like, man, it'd be kind of cool to do something like that.
Yeah.
That's
and
cool.
so I created a studio in a walk-in closet in our spare bedroom.
Yeah.
And I threw a little desk in there, and I just did a sports podcast.
Okay.
So I just talked about sports and kind of got the hang of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, it's a hard thing to do. What you guys are doing here is great because you can bounce off each other and kind of talk amongst each other. I've heard before that doing a podcast by yourself and speaking basically to no one is kind of like
it's rough
for crazy people.
Hey, what's up, Lee? Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
It was great.
You're speaking to the camera.
Yeah, sitting in a closet and having a conversation with myself is really kind of crazy sounding, but it helped me grow. And then I had the opportunity here when I'm at the 347th Recruiting Squadron here in Southeast Wisconsin, and just having that opportunity to kind of have that experience. And I brought it up when they were asking for ways that we could reach prospective applicants.
Yeah.
And I thought, hey, this might be a new medium that we haven't, approached yet.
For sure.
I did some market research and there just really wasn't much out there.
Yeah.
So I shot my shot.
Pitched it.
Yeah.
I pitched it and they funded it, and it's been pretty good so far. I've really enjoyed it, and like I said, just having the opportunity to get paid to hear people's stories.
Oh yeah.
Is awesome. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, man.
I like when people are not afraid to color outside the lines.
Facts.
And it ends up working out for him. And not only that he create a podcast, launch. It's now funded.
Yep.
He didn't have to come out of pocket for any of that. And like
Yeah.
you mentioned, like the great thing about that is being able to hear people's stories.
Yeah.
So.
And it's almost like this is probably one of the only projects I've heard of that someone got to lead where they literally got to pick every single piece of it and like because you run it out of your office or like the recruiting office, so it's like you actually got to say this is the equipment we're doing, it's in my office, these are the guests,
Nice.
I'm sure that they're like, hey, these would be great guests, but but run it, and it's not like one of those other programs you might do through something else where it's like, oh, great idea, but we're going to run with 75% of it, and you might have like 25%, and the 25% we're going to tell you it's not a good idea because you didn't come up with it.
Yeah. And I got to give huge props to, we got a public affairs NCO here in the squadron. It was like the first one we've gotten we had in a long time.
For sure.
And I've been here for 2 years and I've really wanted to do the podcast, but I never really could get the legs to get it up off the ground and moving, and having that public affairs NCO here, Sergeant Hall, shout out to Sergeant Hall. She has helped. She created the logo. She's been pushing for guests. She
Nice.
kind of does a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm just a talent. I just sit in front of a microphone.
Hard life.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, and I'm sure that you can attest to this, but these podcasts that just start up, we got to do all the work ourselves.
Facts.
Like the post production and the editing, and that is time consuming. Unfortunately, right now we're only doing one episode every 2 weeks.
Yep.
But we'll see how it goes. I'm getting better.
Yeah, creating like that template.
Yeah.
That's what so like when we started the podcast, so we reconnected off of something personal, and then we're hanging out more and more, and then I was telling him, because I ran the old podcast, and I was just like, man, I really want to get back into podcasting, because I think he asked me like, hey man, like what are some of the things you want to do, because like Glenn is very big on like kind of pushing people to be the best that they can be at. And I was just like, oh, well, I want to start doing podcasting again, da da da. And he said, that's funny. I have an idea that's been sitting on the whiteboard for like 2 or 3 years.
Literally.
But I didn't, literally. But I didn't have the know-how because Glenn's not very like tech savvy for the most part. And so
I just hang around people. I just hang around people who are very tech savvy.
Yeah, he's getting good though. He ran a couple lives without me there, and I was like, I'm impressed. And so I was like, well, I mean, if you want to have that conversation, I'm looking for a podcast partner. You have a great idea. I can mold myself to whatever we need to. And we spent like 2.5 months like sitting down and really talking about it. Hey, what's our logo? What are we looking at our logo? And a lot of my experience was like, I wanted to make sure the work was shared. Because I was the tech guy, I always like ended up kind of doing a lot of that type of stuff. And so that was a big thing too, is us speaking about what it is we're open to doing. So like for me, I was like, I'm open to editing, but I don't want to choose the clips. So how you can support me is I want you to rewatch the episode, pick the clips that are good, tell me the timestamps, and I'll edit them. And then I guess I lightweight cheated because then I got a virtual assistant, so then they do all that now. but that's but I at least pay for it. So
it's an even trade off.
It's an even trade off. It's so.
I will say that the clips that you guys choose to kind of advertise the podcast are really good, and they're really well put together. I do like that.
He does a great job.
Yeah, our VA does a phenomenal job.
Well, I mean, like you picked.
I'm just kidding. So we have a great, team, and I think that even with Cam kind of mentioning that in the beginning, I think it's something when you just kind of you have a vision, you cast it, but then when you have a supportive team, and then when you're doing certain things behind the scenes, like you feel even more. Like you have more ownership to it, not just like, oh yeah, the L3 perspective. I kind of get on behind the mic and I just say that, but like I really just from our first day sitting down to where we are now, we're just a couple months into it, but I've seen the significant growth, and from the visuals to everything, and so
it's constant evolution. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it really helps that you complement one another.
Yeah.
I think it just helps the flow of the podcast and just the people want to listen to people that actually seem like they get along and they compliment each other.
Right. Yeah.
Like they don't just like put the dike on. They're like, go home, you schmuck.
Yeah, like when you get that awkward situation, like I've listened to some podcasts where you're like, I don't think that these people should be doing this podcast together.
Yeah.
And it kind of turns you off a little bit. So having that great relationship and that strong foundation is super important to being successful.
Oh, for sure.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the podcast that you have?
Yeah, so it's called the AIRPOWER Hour. And basically what we do and what I do is I sit down with airmen and guardians, and the goal is to listen to their story, to hear their journeys, the chronicles of the airmen and guardians that are a part of the world's greatest air and space power. I think it's what we're trying to do with the AIRPOWER Hour is destigmatize maybe military service or in specific Air Force and Space Force.
Yeah.
And what we get is we get a lot of people that kind of just know about the military from movies, and they don't really understand what we do,
Right.
Or how life is. So what I do is I bring guests on, and we kind of start from day one, and we talk about why they decided to join the Air Force, and their journey, some of the cool things that they've done, the jobs that they've had, the advice and mentorship that they've learned. And it's been really, really awesome being able to listen, because nobody's story is the same. Me and Cam's story was similar to one another's, but it's not the same. And being able to ask those right questions and get that different perspective can potentially help people who may be interested in the Air Force but really have no idea what goes on when you join. So that's the AIRPOWER Hour, and we're having a good time.
So the story that I alluded to at the beginning with me and Lee was we joined at the same time, and we were in tech school together, which is when you learn your job, and they gave us all our assignments, and it was like 70% of people were going to like Dover Air Force Base. And there was like a couple people who were going to the CRW here at Travis.
Okay.
And then there were like one or two overseas assignments. It wasn't much. It was like Danny and like one other person. Yeah. And I didn't want to go to Delaware. I was a California dude. I was like, I don't want to go to the East Coast like that. And so I was like trying to ask everybody and their mom to swap with me. And nobody would initially. Like everyone's like, no, man, I'm not.
I don't want to go to Delaware.
Because Lee had California. And so I think eventually, like, it was like right before the cutoff, I think your family said that they would buy you a car, right? So that you could go back and forth to home, because Delaware was not that far from Wisconsin. And so he was like, I'll trade with you.
Shout out to the parents.
So then I came to California, and he went to Dover. And how did that work out?
I mean, it worked out. I think all things happen for a reason, right?
For sure.
And I learned a lot from Dover. Yeah. And without Dover and the high stress of working at a superport, and the 3 deployments that I went on, I wouldn't have volunteered to do recruiting. Yeah. So technically, Cam, if you think about it and you really break it down, if you wouldn't have came up to me and cried and said, I don't want to be that far away from my mom. I'll be like 30 minutes away from my mom, and gave me the sob story. I don't think that I'd be sitting in this seat. So Cam, I can't thank you enough for doing that.
There you go, man. There you go.
It was all a part of his strategy.
It really does happen for a reason, though. Because I came home, and I got into a lot of trouble, honestly. I was 30 minutes from my mom, and of course, but with that came with my friends from high school. And I worked hard, but as you know, even when you're working hard, you getting in trouble is not good. And so luckily the working hard saved me. I ended up getting married. I have my 3 amazing kids. And even though me and their mom aren't together anymore, I wouldn't change it for the world, just because my kids are super dope. And so, but I remember I got in trouble, and I actually got orders to Korea. And it was funny because my captain was like, the Air Force is truly testing you because they sent you home first, and we already proved you couldn't stay out of trouble here. And now we're sending you to South Korea. So just promise us that you like won't get kicked out the military. And I was like, I got you, man. Luckily here I am still, but and honestly, kind of the same thing because of the experiences I had here in the CRW and like doing all this stuff. Going to Korea, then going to Arkansas, I got really bored with because I had got to do all the cool stuff, right? I got to do JI and all these things that most people had to wait for. And I remember that's what I told them when DSD first came out is I was like, no offense, like I love everything this career field's done for me, but I feel like my calling is somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I got 9 years later, here I am.
Yeah.
But you got out of recruiting and then came back. So So what happened with there?
So it's crazy. So I was, I had a rough first 4 years in recruiting. I was in a critically manned zone, flight, goals, pretty high goals of like 6s and 7s a month. Oof. And it kind of wore on me. I was going through a split with my first wife, and my head wasn't there. So when the cycle came around to have us either decide to stay in recruiting or to go back, I was like, I got to change scenery. I got to go back. And then I met my wife, my current wife, the wife.
Happy.
And it changed my entire perspective of recruiting. That last year, everything. I'm a true believer that if you've got a good foundation and love at home, that it's going to reflect on your work. And I was crushing it, and I didn't want to leave. Yeah. But I already had orders.
Yeah, I mean, you already pulled that.
So big Air Force was like, you've got orders, you got to go.
Yeah.
So I did, and I left, and I went back to air transportation, and for 4 years I was in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yep.
And it was good to be back, to be able to be around more people, more airmen, and especially like, the younger airmen, to be able to lead them on a path, see them from the recruit standpoint, and then to now they're brand new in the Air Force, and I can kind of mold them or continue to mold them, was cool.
Yeah.
And then I sat in some staff meetings, and I listened to these master sergeants who have been in for years or decades, and how passionate they were about air transportation.
Yeah.
And the only thing I could think of is sit there and go, I just don't have it.
Yeah, you're like, I
don't have that passion. And then, I sat down and did some self-reflection, and I thought, my passion is in recruiting.
Yeah.
I love recruiting. I love being able to have the opportunity to change someone's life, to set them up for success.
Yeah.
And then just raise brand awareness for the Air Force because of what it's done for me for the last almost 17 years.
Yeah.
The only way I can pay that forward is to be able to push it out to have everybody else get an opportunity.
For sure.
So I had to do time on station.
Yeah.
And then I called the guy he actually introduced me to my wife.
Yeah.
I called him. He was down at headquarters in recruiting in San Antonio, and I was like, hey,
I want to go back.
Please. I was like, is there any way that I can get back in recruiting? He was like, yeah, just send me your serve. We're in dire need of tier 2 recruiters. And I was like, okay. So I sent my my records down, and like within 3 days, they were like, yep, you've been released from the career field.
Snap.
They got me.
Nothing ever goes that quick.
I know, right? The only caveat to that is they're like, you can go to recruiting.
You're going to go where you go. Need you, though.
But first you're going to Afghanistan.
Oh.
So they tasked me for a deployment, and I couldn't leave until I got back.
They had to get that last little bit out of you. But you know what? I bet you that was the easiest, hardest deployment ever because you knew when you got back, it was a wrap.
It was the best deployment.
Okay.
I was working directly under a 1-star.
Oh.
I was at a headquarters, and I wasn't even doing really anything that had to do with air transportation. So it was an amazing experience, and flying around in a Black Hawk with a general, like, come on.
Yeah.
You can't beat that.
Come on.
Yeah. I agree. Afghanistan was probably, besides Honduras, that was probably my best deployment just because of the mission. But something that you said, sometimes you just have to like not be afraid of the ask. And I know we've talked about that before. Like if it wasn't for you just asking a question, that door may have not even opened up for you again.
Yeah.
And so, and I've never heard someone that has a military recruiting background kind of talk about their passion of like developing people the way you just did that. Because most people out here, they're like, oh, I want to be a master sergeant or a senior NCO, and I want to just kind of train and inspire that next generation of people. But like you had a much broader vision when talking about like, hey, I want to help the Air Force brand, and impact people that way, because you can potentially, like, no kidding, change someone's life and open a great door of opportunities for that, guy or girl that may not have had that opportunity. So that's pretty dope. I like how y'all connected.
Yeah. It's been fun. I mean, like I said, everything in my life has been given to me over the past 17 years from the Air Force. I've got 3 beautiful children and a beautiful wife, and I'm in Wisconsin. The first time I've been back in Wisconsin.
And you're back in the house.
So I'm home, baby. And,
That's what's up.
we got the Milwaukee Bucks playoffs starting. I'm right down the street. I can't be any more thankful for what I've been given. And I mean, I was just talking. I just did a podcast with Kay Wright.
Yeah,
last week.
I synced it.
It's wild. Like sometimes I have to pinch myself to be like, I don't even know how I'm in this position. But the only thing I can do is just be extremely grateful, practice gratitude on a daily, and just pray.
I love it.
Yeah. One of the things I talk to Glenn about a lot is how when the energy, especially in your house, like you talk about, like with you and your wife, like when you have like, and Glenn's the same way with his wife, when y'all have that energy, it's like the universe just like picks things and like puts it in your lap and you didn't even realize it, right? But one of the things I always say though is that you also have to like unnoticedly recognize it to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't always have to be like, oh, universe put this in my pocket today so I can use it. But like you have to be open to like just evolving like with your life as it's moving forward, like where I'm at now, it all happened within a span of 4 months, I think, just the evolution of all these things. And I remember my mom literally coming to me and saying like, did you plan all this out? And I said, no, I just kind of rolled with it. Like when I had to, between getting the job at Travis and selling my house and doing all these things. And she's like, it just fell into place too well. And I said, you know what? A lot of it was, I honestly stopped, like, I don't want to say begging for things, but like, there's these things that we want. And I honestly just like kind of relinquished my want of those things. Because in the space that I was in, they weren't best for me in that space. Yeah. And so the universe presented them to me in the more appropriate space where it was supposed to happen. I told myself I always want to be a flight chief. That was my dream. I want to lead people. I want to lead a team. I want to make it. But unfortunately, where I am at currently, as far as state-wise, that you don't get that opportunity here. Even as a flight chief, it's not what we know being a flight chief kind of is. And then also in the environment, right? And so in retrospect, but I wanted the advancement. So it's like one comes with the other one. And so then I was introduced to the ISR program, and I happen to know the guy at Travis. He happens to be retiring. My podcast, I had the chief of the program on the podcast. Nice. And as soon as we got off, he messaged me and said, I want to talk to you about your career progression. And at that point, he was like, I know a guy's retiring. I want you to apply for the job. And I was like, okay, cool. Sure. And here I am.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's crazy how things work out.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize like the law of attraction is a real thing. And I think that too, you're obviously a very optimistic person. And so I've noticed that like when you generally have two groups of people, a group that are optimistic and another group that's not, when things happen to them, their perspective on that thing happening to them is very key in that next that next step that they take, right? Because, you know, you take that next step, and then if the paths are going like this, the more steps you take become further and further, or you become closer and closer to the thing, and you attract more of those things in your life. And that's beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful. So you know, we've been in the same amount of time, so we're coming up on that glory 20 years. Oh my God, I'm so old.
Yeah.
And so what's it look like after, man? Like, have you given it thought?
So I've kind of gone back and forth and what I want to do. I just completed it took me 16 years, but I just completed my bachelor's degree.
Hey.
As a bachelor's of science in leadership.
Okay.
With a concentration in interdisciplinary studies.
Okay.
Because I've always loved the idea of leading, being and developing leaders.
Yeah.
So I know where we're going to go when I retire. We've got some family down in the South Bend area where I actually initially recruited and where I met my wife. So we're going to go back there. It's kind of close to my home and close enough, you know.
Yeah.
So where we can still see them on a regular basis, but the housing market, you know, you got to look at those things. You got to look at schools.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, it's not like when we were single, we're just like, yeah, I want to go there.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna
That's
go
my
there.
place.
And I'll make it happen.
And I'll do it.
I'll just figure it out when I get there. So we've done a lot of planning and I've had some potential job opportunities. One of them would be a leadership development job.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which would be really fun. I mean, to do that. The dream is always, you know, again, my passion is hearing people's stories and talking. So a podcast would be great.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes, but I know that we've got really, to be honest with you, Cam, and you probably understand this. I just want to settle down a little bit. You know, slow, plant some roots.
Yeah.
And not have to worry about like where I'm going next.
Yeah.
Stability is huge. I told my wife this, like, when you're in the Air Force, you don't have a ton of like you have stability, but I use this as an example. I've been in for 16, almost 17 years now, and I've never had like a barber, you know, where you go to one person, like that's your person.
Yeah.
You know, it's always like, I got to find this place, and then I'm going to move. And I'm going to find another one. And
Please
they're
don't
going to
mess
mess
up
my
my
hair
hair.
up. So it's just kind of a good. I just want to be able to have some stability. Where like, I'm going to my barber.
Yeah.
And I've been going to this person for 10 years, and they know I don't even have to tell them what kind of haircut I want. They're just going to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that. Like I said, I've loved my time in the military, and I can't thank them enough for it.
Yeah.
But when 20 hits, I'm pushing the button. And I'm settling down. So
That's good stuff, man.
Yeah, this was technically this was assignment number 7. And yeah, people always ask me like, oh, like what's next? And I'm like, well, one, you know, I have 50% custody of my kids. Like an assignment is not worth that to me. So I'm staying wherever they are. But two, you know, as I got older, it's like stability becomes a thing. Like when you're younger, like you say, you're like, whatever, man, I'll pick up and bounce. But once I came back to California, I definitely was like, at the minimum, I am looking forward to hanging out for the next, you know, decade or so till my kids get older. And then at that point, when they're out the house, I do want to travel and things of that nature. But like right now in this season, I enjoy the fact that like I'm here.
Yep.
And you know, I had a barber, but then I was like, man, I just go to the BX now. but that was kind of cool though. Like, but you know, my barber then became my buddy's barber who got out of active duty and became, you know, he's a guard recruiter now too. But like, you know, it's nice to have friends where I'm like, when am I going to leave? So like, I like that me and Glenn are going to be close to each other for the next 15, you know, 10, 15 years. Like that's really nice. You know, I like that. My mom is up the street. You know, my boys who are out of the military and live locally in Sacramento now, like that's nice. Like I have like my core group of friends is now my core group of friends,
Right.
not like my phone friends.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's how it be,
That's
man.
awesome.
That's what I think a lot of recruiters like think they want to be recruiters when they get out, and then a lot of us realize we don't. Like,
Yeah.
it's great while you're doing it, but no.
I see. Nah, I couldn't do it.
I was like, oh, what's he gonna say?
But I will say that the tools that recruiting
Oh,
has
yeah.
given me,
Bro,
like, immeasurable. I mean,
facts.
before I became a recruiter, I could not speak publicly. I mean, I would get all sweaty and like ALS was a nightmare. And now, I mean, I have no issue going in front of 1,000 people. And I know that you, Cam, you do these, you do like life coach stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you're standing in front of people and it's without a blink of an eye. Like, I know that you're not worried about it or scared or nervous. It's just muscle memory now. And,
Yep.
and I have to thank that because there is no harder audience to try to get to or connect with than a bunch of high school students at a classroom presentation.
Bro.
Yeah.
Facts.
So these tools that recruiting has given me to the marketability and the speaking with conviction, looking at people in the eyes. I tell my wife, I'm like, if I have an interview on the outside, like, it's over.
Yeah.
Because I will get that job just because of the way I have learned to sell myself and carry myself. So
Yeah.
very appreciative, but I don't want to be on any type of production based goal when I'm retired.
Oh, for sure. And that's something I try and instill in all recruiters that I come across that like haven't seen the light yet, right? Is they concentrate on kind of the negative, like, oh, the goal and this. And I'm like, dude, so like for ours, they raised our goals and everyone started freaking out. And I remember my boss called me, he's great. And he's like, hey, I just want to give you an opportunity to voice any concerns you got. And I said, it's like this number, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, cool. He's like, that's all you got? And I was like, bro, I've been in this game too long, man. Like, as long as I follow the AFI and I do what I'm supposed to be doing, I can't force people to join the military. Like, you can't touch me. And he's just like, please share that with like the rest of your people. And I feel like there is a point where most people who are in some type of production based environment kind of reach that epiphany, where they're like, I just need to do what I'm supposed to do, but like all these tools and the things that I'm getting are like invaluable as long as I learn how to use them correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going through the same struggles right now on the active duty side.
Oh yeah, everyone is.
It's been tough. This new generation is it's a little more difficult to show them or enlighten them that, you know, the Air Force, we're not just marching around at a base. You know?
Oh yeah.
That you get to have a life when you join the Air Force, and there's so many things that you get from it. And again, going back to the AIRPOWER Hour, like we're just trying to shed that light, and but everybody's struggling, everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
It's
I think
hard.
you hit on something good that a lot of people, both of you guys actually alluded to it, but a lot of people don't recognize. Like, I remember when I was wearing a uniform, I would tell a lot of the airmen, big A airmen, like, hey, if you decide to serve 4 years, 8 years, 16, 20, like, there's so many tools that you can get to equip you for whatever's after.
Yep.
You know, the Air Force, whatever your next chapter is. And so you have to, instead of just focusing on the thing, focus on the process within the thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's what it is. Like you mentioned, like prior to coming in, you know, you used to get sweaty with public speaking.
yeah,
You know, now, you know, it's a gift that you have. It's a skill that you've developed that could probably land you any job that you want. Right. And so because of you focusing on the process and not necessarily just the dangling carrot.
For sure.
So
everyone has to evolve, honestly. Like realistically, like after COVID and all those things that happened, I mean, there isn't the problems that any organization have, all the organizations relatively have.
Yeah.
Just it's it's a rebranding of sorts, you know, and that happens generationally, you know, as things go on. So I enjoy watching it. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Let's see what they
It's
do next.
interesting. I mean, these young recruiters, they have so many great ideas.
Oh yeah.
And they're just coming up with really cool ways to recruit.
Yeah.
And you know, us old heads are like, I could have never thought of that. You know, I was grassroots approach, like walking around town, handing out my business card. But I mean, they're doing it, and they're at least from my squadron's perspective, they're working really hard to get after it. So the struggle is real, but so is the effort.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's just strength in numbers, man.
Right.
Well, the more they see, the more they go. But as we wrap up, G, you have your money question you like to ask everybody.
Yeah. So, and actually, I like you know, everything that Lee was saying, because he kind of touched on each piece without saying, hey, life, hey, love, hey, leadership. And so, speaking of those three words, life, love, leadership. Obviously, I know you mentioned leadership development, but of those three words, if you could pick one of those words, one of those three words, and just kind of share something for our listeners, our viewers, or watchers, you know, something that's on your heart that you would like to leave them with, based off of any one of those three.
That's a good question. I would have to say I would have to focus on love, because I think without. Hold on 1 second.
Okay, I thought you were getting teary eyed about to talk to me about love. No, I'm just kidding.
Nah, I could. It's important.
Yep.
So yeah, love. I truly believe that without love, you don't have either of the other two, leadership and life. Speaking from my perspective, being married to my wife, and the love that we share with our children, I mean, those things, they are the best.
Yeah.
And it's the reason I wake up every single day. It's the reason why I put the effort forth in being who I am. And I just, without that love, I mean, I would have no drive to be a leader. I would have no will to you know, live a fulfilling life. So I wake up every day and I'm just extremely grateful for the love that is in my home. You know, those little kids in their bed, or they're in my bed because they wake us up and jump in. So I'm forever grateful for that. I've got a tattoo on my arm, and it's my anniversary. But underneath it is 1 Corinthians 16:14. And that verse it says, everything we do with love.
That's my fiance's favorite line ever.
Yeah. So, you know, I got that because my wife and the love that we share, and it kind of just resonates with everything that I do, because it's just really important to me. So that's my thing.
Well, Lee, I definitely appreciate you sharing, man. It's funny you mentioned that topic and you mentioned that scripture, because my wife and I were recently kind of talking about that same thing, and making sure that we create that culture within our home of love. So when our kids are older, when they think about, or they're ever asked, like, "Hey, how was your house? How did you grow up?" The one word that they will say in their sentence is love. And so, Lee, excited for you, man, as you continue on with the podcast, with your next chapter, as you wrap up your career. Appreciate you. I salute you for serving and going through everything that you go through, wearing that uniform. And Cam, I appreciate you connecting us, man.
Yeah, man. And as you guys know, like, love, share. Before we bounce, Lee, tell the people where to find you, the AIRPOWER Hour.
Yeah, so you can find the AIRPOWER Hour on all major podcasting sites, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Prime Music. You can go follow our Instagram. It's at AIRPOWER Hour. We're looking forward to it. We've got some really great guests coming up. So I would highly suggest to tune in because it's really cool. And I think we're gonna have Cam on. I think I'm gonna get Cam on. So listeners of this, the L3 perspective, if you really want to hear about Cam's life and his Air Force story, tune in because he'll be on there.
Be there.
Nice.
One day at a time. Hey, we appreciate you, brother. Hey, that's another episode, you guys. We appreciate you as usual, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.